What you do, your role here at this organization, and what has been happening in the immigration policy landscape or legal landscape that has, what are some of the changes really that are happening, and how you have been able to adapt to those changes, and what is making your work more difficult this time around than it was maybe 2 years ago?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Just start off with your name.
Okay, my name is Atenas Burrola Estrada. I'm a Deputy Program Director with the Detained Adult Program at the Amica Center for Immigrant Rights. That means that I help run the department that provides representation and support to individuals detained by ICE here locally in Virginia, but also for Maryland and DC residents detained anywhere in the country. So we, in the past year, have seen our practice change dramatically. We are an organization that has provided direct representation to detained adults for over 2 decades, and things have changed more, I would say, in the past year than perhaps ever before. One of the biggest changes that we have seen is what I like to call that we have become an accidental nationwide provider, which means that we now have clients detained across the country. Historically, Amica Center has represented individuals who were detained in the DMV, but because we follow our clients, so as long as they were a Maryland or DC resident, we follow them wherever they may go, we now have clients detained in Louisiana, all across Texas and Pennsylvania, in Georgia, even in California. So people who were detained in Maryland, taken to Baltimore, or detained in Baltimore, and then shipped across the country to California or to Arizona. That has been one of the most striking changes, I would say, certainly not the most negative or one of the ones that has made things the most difficult. Those have been the really unparalleled attacks that we have seen on the immigration court system, on immigrants themselves, on due process, just really attacks by the administration across every facet of what can impact immigration defense, and detained removal defense. So really targeting immigrant communities indiscriminately. We've seen that here in DC, we've seen that in Minnesota, we've seen that in LA, and we know that it's happening in other places even if we haven't seen it, right? Even if it hasn't been portrayed in the media, even if it hasn't been portrayed on Instagram, on Twitter, on wherever, TikTok. I don't have TikTok, but so that is something that continues happening. Right? People are being taken off the streets every single day on their way to work, on their way home, outside of their home, being taken off the streets and just placed into this black hole system, disappeared really into this system whose goal is to try to get them to give up their rights, is really what we are seeing the immigration system turning into right now. It's not a system where rights are respected, where people have the ability to pursue the rights that they are due under law, right? Due process, and we're really seeing unparalleled attacks on that, on people's ability to get out of detention, on people's ability to stay out of detention, on people's ability to seek protection, right, to seek asylum, to seek other forms of protection, and then when they win that protection, to continue being protected and not attempts by the administration to remove them, say, to a third country where they might be in just as much risk as they were in the country that they received protection from, or even more if they're just going to be detained at that in that new location.
Talk to us about the family dynamic when an adult is detained and they have a family and they're the only breadwinner. What happens usually?
I mean, that is absolutely destructive for that family, right? Which is not to say that immigrant families are delicate or not resilient. It is absolutely the opposite, right? But when somebody who is the primary breadwinner of that family is detained and spends a long time in detention or ends up being removed back to their home country, what can happen is, families can lose their house. Children can lose access to health care, to education. People can end up on the streets. And this is not just immigrant families, right? A lot of children are U.S. citizen children. They're children who were born here, or even spouses or partners. We got the referral of somebody who had just been detained, who was the primary, the only provider for their child who had sickle cell. And this was the person who handled all of their child's medical appointments, who was authorized to talk to their doctors, and the child's mother was losing her mind because she did not know what she was going to do or how she was going to pay for her child's sickle cell disease treatment, without which this 4-year-old was going to be in unimaginable pain if he didn't get that. So that's just one example of what can happen. Our communities are resilient, right? Immigrant communities are resilient. There are thankfully a lot of mutual aid organizations that are out there that are providing help, that are assisting people who need it. But at the end of the day, you're threatening somebody's life when you take away an integral part of their family, whether they are the primary breadwinner, whether it's a 2-income household, right? It's still incredibly difficult, and honestly, a lot of people's lives are being ruined by this right now, regardless of whether it was the primary breadwinner, a secondary breadwinner, maybe even a sibling, right? A parent, a sibling, a child. Detention ruins people's lives.
Now, we've heard that many people, some of these immigrants are being deported to third world countries, not third world, but what are they called? Third countries. Third countries, not their countries of origin. I guess for people who don't know what that means and how that works, one, why are they not being deported to their countries of origin? And number two, what does it mean that they're being taken to these other countries?
Yeah, so one of the biggest intended tools that the administration is doing right now is what is commonly known as third country removal, which is when they are deporting somebody who is not from that country to that country. There's 2 main groups of people that this happens to. One of them are people who have not asylum, but another form of protection, saying that the United States cannot deport them to their country of origin because they would be persecuted or tortured there, right? So they have won relief, they won their case in court, and the immigration judge found that we could not send them back to their country of origin because they could be persecuted or tortured. And what the administration is doing now is saying, okay, well, we're going to send them to a third country without any regard for how they might be treated in that third country and without any regard for what that third country might do to them. So one of the countries that receives the most amount of these third country removals is Mexico, unfortunately. And we see that a lot of people who are sent to Mexico are actually just directly refouled, we call it, back to their country of origin. So they are actually sent back to the country that the United States immigration court system determined their life would be in danger and that they could not be sent to. This happens primarily to Central Americans right now, so Guatemalans, Salvadorans. They have won relief from being sent to their country of origin, so the United States deports them to Mexico, and Mexico then turns around and sends them straight back to the country where we said they were going to be persecuted or tortured from. That's one group of people, so people who have won relief and get sent to another country. It's not just Mexico. The United States has been strong-arming countries all over the world, but focusing particularly on Africa, right? Essentially trying to what I would call blackmail African countries into accepting these third country removals of individuals who have won relief elsewhere. The other category of people that can be sent, or that we are seeing that are sent to these third country removals, are people who have final orders of removal, but for whatever reason, their home country won't take them. So their home country refuses to take them, refuses to issue travel documents, and the United States is now saying, okay, well, what other country can we strong arm into taking them? We have seen this with a plane of individuals early on sent to Sudan, for example, where they were just then arrived and in Djibouti, thank you, and stayed imprisoned, right? They never made it out. We have seen the administration do more and more of these agreements where they're sending these individuals there to frankly problematic situations, right? Where individuals, maybe starting from they have no relationship with that country, maybe they don't even speak the language, but unfortunately, for better or worse, a lot of these countries do not have the most calm, let's say they don't have exactly calm situations in many of these countries. Some of them, in fact, are countries where the United States says don't travel there, right? And yet this is where they are sending individuals, both those who have won protection from their country of origin and those who, for whatever reason, their country of origin says, we're not going to accept this person for removal, including some countries that the United States just doesn't have relationships with, and so they don't remove people to those countries, regardless of what the person's background might be. Those are two of the most popular. There's also a whole other category of countries that the United States has signed what are called Asylum Cooperative Agreements, where arguably what that country is agreeing to is that somebody can apply for asylum in that country, and because they can, then we're not allowing them to apply for asylum here, which is not how asylum law works, right? Like the law as it was passed by Congress, signed by the president, says that if somebody steps foot in the United States and fears persecution in their country of origin, they are allowed to seek asylum here in the United States. It doesn't say we have to grant them asylum, but it says we have to allow them to seek asylum. And so via these ACAs, we call them, the administration is trying to circumvent asylum law, circumvent international law, certainly, and force people to go to other countries where perhaps they are not safe and where largely there are much weaker protection and asylum infrastructures than there are in the United States, which already doesn't have a particularly strong one, but a lot of these other countries are even weaker, and some of them engage in human rights violations themselves.
How would you say the courts have responded to these sometimes what has been described as illegal orders from the president in regards to, immigration law? Like you said, Congress has passed this, the president has signed it, and then the next day you hear that the president has signed an executive order which it goes very much counter to the law. Mm-hmm. How have the courts responded to this moment, I guess?
So there's two different courts at play here, right? One set of courts are the immigration courts, and the immigration courts actually sit under the executive. They are not independent courts, and in this situation, what that means is they sit under the president. And what we have seen happen in the immigration courts is that immigration judges who don't seem to agree with what the administration is saying or with what the administration's policies are, they're being punished. They're being fired or they're being taken off their dockets. And so immigration judges are really being forced to fall in line or risk losing their jobs. If they don't, which we have seen many, many judges, we've seen probably several dozen judges be fired if they don't, and that's because that court is controlled by the executive. On the other hand, the federal courts have reacted very differently, right? We have seen many lawsuits brought in different circuits, and the courts have fallen on both sides, right? There are some courts that have agreed with certain policies or laws put out or executive memos put out by the president. There are other courts that have vehemently disagreed. I think one prime example right now of a place where the federal district courts are overwhelmingly in agreement is the decision of who is eligible to seek release from detention and who is not. So there's been a series of decisions and what are functionally not policy memos, but just the way that the immigration court system is set up. There have been decisions that have come out that have attempted to severely limit who can get out of detention. The administration is functionally arguing that every single person who did not enter with a visa is not eligible to get out of detention, which is typically not how the law has been understood, or I would argue is written. And what the response has been to this is an overwhelming number of habeas corpus petitions in federal district courts. And the vast majority of those petitions are being granted, right? The federal district court judges, who are actual judges, right? They are not appointed by the executive. They are not controlled by the executive. So they are independent judges. They are looking at the law and they are saying, this is wrong. These people should not be mandatorily detained. They either have the right to a bond hearing to determine whether they should be released, or they should just be released. And this is now the case even in situations where the Circuit Court of Appeals, which arguably does control federal district court judges, there have been 2 circuits that agreed with the administration's interpretation of mandatory detention, the 5th and the 8th. And at least in the 5th, even there, the federal district court judges are still granting these habeas petitions under due process. Right, so they are saying that under due process, under the United States law, people have a right to get out of detention. And so that, I think, has been really one of the places that has had the most amount of impact right now on people's lives. So not just thinking about, impact litigation and these big lawsuits that are always in the news, but like this is one very a direct place that is having an impact because people are literally getting out of detention because of these federal district court judges. And this is not a situation that the immigration bar, immigration practitioners, or really people in immigration detention have ever found themselves before. Habeas corpus, historically, for people in immigration detention is a place of last resort, right? You can only seek to be released via habeas after you have exhausted all of your other remedies, and if you have typically been in detention for a very long time. And now that's not the case. I mean, I think there's been probably thousands of habeas cases brought nationwide that are getting people out of detention, again, because these federal district court judges are looking at the law and saying, this is the law. The law says people have a right to get out of detention, and disagreeing with the administration's interpretation of that law.
Mm-hmm. I see you light up a lot when you're talking about your work, and it's pretty impressive. I wonder, what keeps you motivated as well? Why do you take so much passion and interest in this work that you do? It's very important. So. Yeah.
Well, I have been an immigration attorney my whole career. I like to say I grew up as a nonprofit immigration attorney, so it's why I went to law school. It's what I have always wanted to do, is work as an immigration attorney, work helping this community. Right now, I think it is harder than it has ever been. Those of us who worked through Trump 1 thought we knew what we were getting into as we went into Trump 2, and we did not. Frankly, it has been so much worse, this administration, than it was under the first Trump administration, and it's really hard. I'm not gonna lie, it is very hard to continue this work, but I'm motivated by my coworkers. I'm motivated by the people we help. Frankly, I'm also motivated by my paycheck. I have to pay rent. I have to feed myself. If I was independently wealthy, I do not know if everything else would be motivating me towards this. But I do think that right now, more than ever, there is a line in the sand, right? And either you are helping and you're fighting against this descent into fascism and this descent into authoritarianism, or you are not. And this is where I know how to fight, right? This is what I know how to do. And so this is where it feels like my skills are best put to use. And I don't litigate anymore, but what I really view my role as is supporting our staff in what they do. They're the ones that are actually litigating these cases every day. They're the ones that are meeting with people in detention and educating people so that they can try to fight for themselves if they can't get an attorney. And so my role is really how do we, or what I view my role is how do we support our staff into being able to continue this work and continue doing it in a way that is healthy for them and that is respecting and creating boundaries while still moving forward with the work of helping people, getting people out of detention. And a lot of the time at this point, just making sure that people in detention know what the options are and are able to make a decision that is best for themselves and for their family.
What would you tell the everyday American about immigration or immigrants as a whole, filling this landscape?
What would I tell the everyday American? I guess what I would say is don't believe everything you hear, depending on where you're hearing stuff, but honestly, don't believe everything the New York Times says, don't believe everything Fox News says. I would encourage people to go out into their communities, right? Meet their communities, meet their neighbors, see who is in need of help, what are ways that somebody can help. Not everybody is an attorney, not everybody has money to give, right? But everyone rather has the ability to educate themselves, to learn about what is going on, whether that's getting connected to a mutual aid group locally that's maybe running a hotline or helping take kids to school, right? If somebody's parent has been disappeared, or for those who do have the resources, giving money to organizations that are helping or volunteering their time. So I think my broadest message would be educate yourself, whether that is by going out into your community, by doing a little bit of research, by getting connected to an organization that is doing the work, is just educate yourself and make sure that you're not just falling into traps that are being put out there right now about immigrants.
And finally, what would you say to Donald Trump?
Oh God, I don't think that's safe for work. I don't think I can say that. What would I say to Donald Trump?
Policy change?
Yeah, nobody has ever asked me that before. Maybe what I would say, because I don't think he cares about morals or morality or the impact that his policies are having on people's lives. So maybe I would say, you realize what you're doing is costing a lot of money. It's costing taxpayers money. It's not, it's costing a lot of people money, and it's hurting businesses. It's hurting American businesses. It's hurting Americans. And so maybe reconsider based on that.
Thanks for tuning into TANTV. Local journalism matters. In fact, journalism as a whole matters today more than ever, which is why we're asking for your support. You can support by donating to TANTVnews.com, by sharing, and by subscribing. So subscribe today at TANTVnews.com.